Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Webinar Wednesday. My name is Brandon Lilly, and joining me today is David Rogers. David, how you doing?
Man, doing awesome. How are you, Brandon?
I'm doing quite well. Thank you for taking the time to jump in here with us. Everybody, David is a senior marketing director here at Marketing 360. He runs one of our marketing teams. And honestly is quite of a genius when it comes to contractor marketing. So I wanted to pull him in here so we can have a conversation about strategy, tips, tricks, everything that we want to talk about. If you guys want to follow along in this presentation, go to m360.us/0D8D. Again, that's m360.us/0D8D. So we're going to cover a couple of different things here. And you know, David, you've put together a list for us of kind of your primary focuses and things that you want to talk about. And just to kind of list those off real quick, and then we'll dive into each one of them. You know, in this webinar, we want to talk about how to have a strong value proposition and how to craft that, how your website can be used to showcase, you know, your craftsmanship, what you do, your services, how to build a strong reputation and provide some social proof, and we'll dive into that. How to make campaigns and keep those campaigns simple and provide easy buying opportunities. So, David, anything to add before we really get started?
No, Brendan, I think that's perfect. You know, you and I talked about this a little bit earlier today, and honestly, simplicity, in my opinion, is best here. And those are the 5 categories that I think are going to make the most difference. Definitely have made the most difference for the contractors I've worked with throughout my career.
Excellent. So let's go ahead and jump right in. We're moving over to the value proposition slide. Now, a value proposition, for those of you that don't know, is just a fancy word that people made up. Actually, it's the unique selling advantage. It's what sets you apart from maybe your competitors or other people in your industry. You know, what it's not, obviously, is, well, we have good customer service. Well, I expect you to have good customer service. I expect any business I work with to, at minimum, provide that. We do great work. Yes, obviously you should. That's part of being in business. And if I'm hiring you or anyone's hiring you, we expect you to do great work. Now, the other guys are terrible. That's not what this is. David, walk me through what a value proposition really is so that we can kind of craft one here. What's a value proposition really look like?
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, the easiest way to figure out if you are on the right track for basically creating a value proposition or one that will work, the filter that I like to run both our marketing executives through and also clients is just, is it tangible or is it quantifiable? So when I say that, I'm really just asking, is it something that I could maybe hold in my hands, or is it like a number, like a price that, like maybe you offer the lowest price, for instance, or maybe you offer the fastest turnaround time. So really what we want is to make sure that if you're sitting down and brainstorming what makes you different than your competition, is it tangible or is it quantifiable?
Excellent.
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about that. You know, I know one thing that you said is that they are tangible or quantifiable there. You talked about price advantage. Yeah. And we've talked on our other webinars. That's not always the thing that you really want to focus on, because sometimes what happens is you find that there's someone else in the industry that can just beat you on price every time.
Right.
And I've found in my experience that trying to compete on price isn't always the greatest solution there, but there's plenty of companies that do that, right? Fiverr is a really good example of that. You know, that's just who they are. It's a part of their value proposition. Right. So it's interesting. It's unique that you're able to take different pieces like that and use that to create a pretty cool value proposition, what your company really stands for.
Yeah, absolutely. And I 100% agree with that. The price point advantage is really specific to certain industries or certain instances, kind of depending on what your competitive market looks like. But you don't always, especially as a contractor, want to be just the guy that's shooting for the lowest price point. So that tangible or quantifiable value proposition, it can absolutely be something that looks different. One example that comes to the top of mind is there was a gentleman kind of in a different industry who shipped cars across the country. And instead of that's a very cutthroat industry. So instead of trying to just always underbid his competition, he started figuring out that what was even more important to his customers was they cared if their car would make it across the country without any damage or not. So he started offering a damage-free guarantee. And basically he said, if anything happens to your car during shipment, I will personally cover the costs of repair or replacement to whatever happened. And his conversion rates just soared through the roof. And because of it, he was also actually able to increase his prices because he found what was more important than just price point to his customers. And it's something you can hear is very tangible and quantifiable.
See, I think that's it right there. It wasn't just he decided that this was now his value or his company's value. He figured out what was important to his customers.
Right.
And then he used that to create what kind of set him apart. And for all I know, this could be something that he just already did in his company and then realized, I already do this, but if I say it, that makes a big difference. So I love that. That's a fantastic example. Let's move on a little bit. Do you have anything to add about value propositions?
I think the last 2 points and kind of what you just heard in my example is a good value proposition is generally really bold. So it probably will make your stomach sink a little bit, but it should, because it will also make your competitors look at your offering and go, shoot, we can't beat that. That's really bold. And it also gives people just a really concrete reason to hire you. That is why they are so important. I know that we've only spent a few minutes on this concept, but it's probably the most foundational for contractors to a successful marketing campaign is having a really strong value proposition.
Especially if the value proposition is one of the first things that they see when they're searching for you. It's the top of the funnel, right?
Yeah.
They're just in that research mode. So you only have a couple of seconds to grab hold of somebody. Your unique selling advantage and your value proposition needs to do that within seconds. That's
Absolutely.
Really cool.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's move on to this next slide here. I know you've got a screenshot of JRK Flooring. Walk me through this. What are we looking at here?
Yeah, so actually this was just a quick follow-up example to the value propositions and exactly what I was just talking about. I wanted to give a real-time case study for everybody. So JRK Flooring, excellent client. He's been with me for several years now. You'll see at the top, just under his logo, there's a banner with an American flag. And we have 4 value propositions. 2 of them are really specific, tangible, and quantifiable. So $1.99 a square foot refinishing and $2.50 a square foot sand, stain, and finish. Those are price point value propositions, but they're very concrete numbers, and they are numbers that beat his competitors in his market for what he did. Now, Justin and I spent some time on how we could improve conversion rates, and implementing these front and center on the site was our way of doing that. So if we move to the next slide, Brandon, that's actually a chart that shows us the date that we implemented those value propositions, and you just see that conversion line there increase exponentially. So without even huge increases in traffic, we were able to almost triple the amount of leads that he was getting.
See, now let's talk about that a little bit, because we're not talking about necessarily an increase in budget. What we're talking about is refining your message and refining the website so that your money is being spent more effectively. And when people come to your site, what we're looking at here is that the people that were coming to the site, they were all already great potential customers and clients. Mm-hmm. They just didn't know it yet, right? They didn't know it yet, and JRK wasn't necessarily doing a fantastic job of expressing what their really unique sales proposition, that value proposition, looked like. So walk me through that. All we did was, or all you did, I'm sure it was much more complex than this, but by defining, really understanding what the customer wanted, which is a clear price point, kind of speaking to what they were looking for, providing that information up front, putting up the trust badges and things like that, with no changes to the traffic or the marketing campaign, you can clearly see that there was a big increase in the leads here. Walk me through your strategy a little bit on that.
Yeah, honestly, I will give a lot of credit to the business owner here. He is always a thinker. He always wants to write the best ads. He always wants to provide the best service, for his customers. But he and I kept mowing over that conversation of, you can't just, tell people that you are the best customer service or the best quality or whatever. That's not something that people will really tangibly grab onto. And so he's actually the one who came up with those price points and said, I really, this is what's going to separate me. Nobody else is doing this. Let's try this. So we implemented both on the site and within the ad copy, among existing ad copy that we were testing. And what you'll actually see is not only did we have that huge spike in conversions without changing anything but the ads and and that header on the site. But that blue top placement ads line there, which is our paid search campaign on Google, its traffic soared through the roof as well. And the kind of the behind the scenes consequence or result of that was our click-through rates soared exponentially. So even though we were spending more dollars on these campaigns, our conversion rate had tripled and our cost per conversion actually dropped about 25% as well. So we were paying less per lead. Yes, we were spending more money, but he was also getting exponentially more leads after that change. So worth it across the board. Absolutely.
Yeah, that seems like a best case scenario right there. That's fantastic. Yeah. But it really shows the value of having a unique value proposition and something that isn't just unique, but it also speaks to what the customer is looking for. There's a lot of value there.
Absolutely.
So let's move on and let's talk a little bit, we'll go to our next slide. We'll talk about building a reputation. We see this all the time. And I'm sure that, for everybody watching, you've seen this also. People follow the masses, right? Mm-hmm. If someone has a lot of great reviews, just innately, it seems like you're more likely to trust them. Whereas if you go to a business and they have no reviews, how often is it that you want to be the person that just jumps in first, right? Right. You don't want to be the person to take the risk, especially, and this is especially important when we're talking about contractors, because for the most part, these are not always small jobs. We're not talking, you're buying a widget. For a lot of this could be a bathroom remodel. This could be roofing or landscaping, or things like that. So it's incredibly important for this contractor market, because usually those are larger ticket items, or they're much more visible than, again, just buying a widget off of Amazon. So having a strong online reputation is just incredibly important. Again, because opinions confirm people's buying decisions. So that's what we're looking at. I've always seen, and David, I'm sure that you can speak to this as well, more reviews equal higher conversion rates, and the fact that positive reviews build some organic ranking. So walk me through this a little bit. I know that we've got Top Rated Local here, which I love to always give a plug for them because they're a great platform. But let's talk a little bit about how do you build a strong reputation?
Yeah, honestly, Brandon, building the actual reputation, getting reviews, getting testimonials, it's a pretty simple process. There's some different channels and tools that you can utilize, but ultimately it just comes down to creating the habit of continually asking your customers for their feedback. For contractors specifically, that can be done on the job immediately following that job. I've even had clients who will carry around an iPad with them and just ask customers on the spot, hey, we loved working with you. This project was a lot of fun for us. We can clearly tell that you're really happy with the result. Would you mind just dropping a quick review for us here on our iPad? For the customer, it's in the moment. It's not taking extra time out of their day that they were previously vested in something else. And it's just a really easy and quick way to build those reviews. You can do.
What a great opportunity to build some social media posts also, right? Some really good user-generated content. You take a picture of the homeowner and their new landscape yard, and they left you a great review. You put their little testimonial, goes up on Facebook, goes on Instagram. I love that idea of having the iPad and just reaching out to people directly right in that moment. So I'm sorry to interrupt, but I was too excited about that to let it pass.
Well, and to expand even on your thought there, if you have something like an iPad or, whatever, it also gives you the opportunity to potentially build video reviews. And so video reviews and testimonials can be very, very strong things to place on a website. They just personify what is previously something that's just, since a normal testimonial is just text-based, it can be, somebody, said that and that's great. But then if you put an actual human in front of people who say, I love so-and-so client, they did an amazing job on my home or whatever the job is, that just brings in a whole new element of trust building, especially directly on the site. So having something like an iPad provides a lot of opportunity, in my opinion, and I think that everybody should make that couple $100 investment if possible.
It really doesn't even always have to be the iPad. Most phones can handle doing things like that, smartphones. I understand the iPad's probably easier, but I want to take away all the excuse barriers possible. Don't use the fact that you as a contractor don't have an iPad or don't have a budget for that you've probably got a phone, so just go ahead and pull it up to Facebook reviews, pull it up for your Google reviews. Sign up for Top Rated Local. It's a free platform. You can get reviews there as well. It's mobile friendly. And it's also going to aggregate your reviews. So you don't have to have the iPad, and don't let that be an excuse. Don't let that hold you back. So anything that you can do to get these reviews. And I love what you were saying about the video reviews, because I think that really feeds into another opportunity to build out some good organic ranking. As you take those video reviews, you put them on Facebook, put them on YouTube. YouTube is the world's second largest search engine. And obviously Google kind of gives a benefit to video content. Right. So you've got a much higher likelihood of even that producing more organic results for you, more traffic. That's fantastic. So I like how you were able to kind of tie all that in together.
Yeah. And honestly, Brandon, some of this, what we've been talking about for a couple minutes really gets in the weeds a little bit. There's a lot of different strategies that will work to actually build that review base. And I think that's more on a case by case or individual basis in conversation on how you would go about doing that. Having something like an iPad's great. Sending out an email campaign like we do in our reputation management is another great way to do it. Or even just simply asking people on the spot, though not as effective, is still even a third option. But I think the why is more critical than the how you go about doing it in the strong reputation, or as far as strong reputations go. The reason is because having that online reputation just being really positive, other people's opinions, and especially positive opinions, will confirm and affirm what people already think they want to do. So oftentimes all you need to get somebody to push over that fence and make the buying decision is simply showing them that other people have made the same buying decision and had a good experience. And if you tie that with a strong value proposition, you oftentimes don't even have to have the price point, competitive advantage.
It's confirmation bias, right?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
All you're doing is confirming that I know how to make good choices.
Yes.
So now we know the why, we know the how. You need to have reviews. Now you've got an idea of how to get some of them and what to do with them. Let's move on. Let's talk about the website. This is your number one. Almost all the time, it's going to be one of your very first impressions. It's the first time that somebody interacts with your brand. They see your value proposition. They're researching and they're identifying what they want to do moving forward. So they look at your reviews. This is your number one, example of the kind of business that you are, and it's your number one salesperson too. So you can take the time and craft your message. Walk me through this a little bit here, David. Let's talk about the importance of a website and what kind of extremely important elements that a strong, highly convertible website needs to have.
Yeah, that's a big question. You can have an entire webinar about websites.
We actually did, and we'll link to that webinar after this one goes after we go live here, or as we end this webinar. We will link to that webinar where we talked about with Jeremy about how to create a website and a landing page that's highly convertible. But I want to kind of reinforce a little bit of that here. Let's talk about what you see from a contractor standpoint. What's important for a website to have?
Sure, absolutely. Well, I will say for anyone watching, Jeremy is a website genius, and so I would highly encourage watching that webinar recording after this. It will definitely tie in well to these points here. Why is having a really strong website important? It's not because it's the latest and greatest thing that you're seeing advertisements on your Facebook page to do. It's not because something that Bluehost or GoDaddy told you that you should just do when you buy a domain name. But really, it's the first impression of your brand. It's the first impression oftentimes that people have of your work, first or second impression. And it's going to act as your number one salesperson. So you want to make sure that not only visually is it really appealing and it just really communicates well what you do and offer, but you also want to make sure that it's really easy to use. It provides really easy ways to get into contact with you, and that it eases people's concerns well. So keep it simple. Keep a website straightforward and easy to navigate. highlight your value proposition, showcase your best work, usually in some kind of gallery or maybe even video walkthroughs of your work are great. Showcase that positive reputation that we've talked about, and then just provide multiple contact opportunities for people so that you speak to everybody's comfort level and provide those opportunities.
I love it. Instead of diving super deeply into each of these points, we'll link to our other webinar that we created about creating highly convertible landing pages and websites. So David, anything to add before we move on?
No, I think Jeremy does a great job in the website webinar. So again, I would just encourage watching that. It will expand upon this topic more.
Excellent. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about our marketing channels. You already mentioned this a little bit. The KISS method, keep it super simple. Really? Yep. That's what you meant?
Yep.
Yeah. You don't need to do everything trendy that everyone talks about. You don't have to be trendy, but you do have to be present. You do have to be there where your customers are looking. Remember, obviously, that people are searching first, and we love to look at Google and Bing and those intent-based search engines. I intend to find something, so I search for it, and I find it. And then walk me through all these different these channels, because we're kind of building a funnel here, right? We're starting with our research and our intent, and then we're narrowing people down into actually making this the sales or the buying decision. So walk me through this.
Yeah, absolutely. The only reason I have that first point there is you really don't need, when I say all trendy things, I guess a lot of the trendy things that you hear out there, like, click funnels and like landing pages and all these things, they're just different terms or ways to market certain things that people can sell. So in a sense, you need them, but trying to, hopefully I can bring some light to what those actually are and what you really need here. And honestly, it's a very simple setup process. It's just a matter of executing. So the most important thing to understand, especially for contractors, is just how people move through the sales funnel. Where do they start? What is their very first intent? And how do you nurture them all the way through that sales funnel? When you think about something like a contractor, whether you're doing remodels or new builds, or maybe you focus on a specific niche of something, oftentimes you are working with projects that people don't necessarily have to do every day. So let's say that you're a painter, for instance, you do home painting. Most people don't have to repaint their house once every 4 months. This is a every 5, 6, 7 years project. So you trying to become a household name, though you want to be recognized, isn't as important as just making sure that you are in front of people when they're actually looking for somebody to paint their house every 5 or 6 years. How do you do that? Well, we know that in those moments, people are going to search first. Where are they going to go? I think any of us would answer they're either going to hop on Google or they're going to hop on Bing. So we need to make sure that you're there. You have to make sure that your value proposition stands out so that people even have a reason to click on your advertisements or your listing and come to your website to have an opportunity to be shown more. The next thing people are going to do is compare second. We're shoppers. We're all shoppers at heart. We want to see if people have better offers, if they have better prices, if they have, additional services that they include for, the same or similar prices. So people are going to look at your competitors. Unless you are the very small percentage of contractors where you're the only one in your market, people will always go and compare. So that's where that value proposition and the first impression that your website gives becomes incredibly important to make sure that you create a lasting impression that even when they go look at 2 or 3 other guys, they can't beat what you had already offered them. Third, people will verify. They're going to look at that reputation. They're going to see if others had a good experience with you. They want that social proof, and they're going to see what kind of freebies you might offer them. So this is basic stuff like free estimates, or maybe you'll do a free color consultation if you're a painter, or maybe you'll do a free like mock-up if you're building a home or a deck or something for somebody, something like that. What can you get to say, I care about your business so much that I'm willing to give you this without anything in return? And then the last step is obviously the bottom of the sales funnel. People are going to buy. What will make them buy? Strong retargeting campaigns, making sure that you're consistently following up with them in multiple ways, providing easy buying opportunities, just making sure that your sales cycle is really efficient. It's easy to understand. There's nothing questionable or that makes people doubt you. And then just giving them any kind of additional incentive that you can. That's where your charm and your good customer service come into play. It's when you're just interacting with these leads at the final stage and making them like you, building that reputation or that relationship, excuse me.
Yep. People buy from people that they like. So especially when you're getting down to that level of someone making a purchasing decision, that's where, like you said, the customer service and the ability to communicate effectively, answering the phone professionally, having those conversations, it really comes into play.
Absolutely. I know that was a little bit long-winded, but it all kind of fits together and is important there together. So thanks for bearing with me.
It is. Well, I think you've got some examples here of some customer analytics on this next slide, kind of showcasing how these different programs can layer in with each other and what this looks like. So walk me through this screenshot here. What are we looking at and where's the value?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is, I kept bringing up painters in the last slide because I knew that this was coming up. This is a local painter that I've worked with for several years now. This is a snapshot of 30 days of just a typical 30 days during his high season that he'll see. So we see really strong conversion numbers up across the top, really strong conversion rate, 12.85%. And that cost per conversion is very reasonable. And these are all quality leads too. It's important to recognize that. He'll generally close 1 out of every 2 leads that he gets. So we're really talking about a $60 for closed job. Wow. The thing that I want to point out here is just the diversity that he's getting all of these leads and traffic from. So natural listing ads across the top, that's going to be organic channels. That's Google, that's Bing, that's Yahoo. We've really built up strong organic rankings, but you can see that it's the #1 conversion driver now. Top placement ads, that's our paid search. We are running on both Google and Bing paid search networks. Very strong conversion rate. We have really healthy conversions that come in. Again, he'd be losing a good chunk of business if we cut that entirely. Retargeting and brand and other channels, those two will tie heavily together. Retargeting, you'll still see that there's some conversions there. The conversion rate is okay, but a lot of times the advantage there is that we're a brand reminder with those banners in front of people. And so we see that brand and other channels row at the bottom actually has a very strong conversion rate and conversion numbers. Those are really giving us a snapshot of like direct visits that are coming back and end up turning into leads. And we can, if we were to go look at the conversion paths, see that retargeting influences those direct visits a lot. So in summary, the most important thing to see here is just the spread that you really shouldn't just put all your eggs in one basket and try and focus on just one channel, but taking the time to build up the traffic and conversions that you're getting across the board will be really crucial to seeing very healthy conversion numbers.
I love that you pointed out that you can't put all of your eggs in one marketing basket, right?
Yes.
Somebody could look at this and go, well, why am I bothering to spend any money elsewhere on these paid channels because I could do so well organically? Well, one, ranking high organically is an investment in and of itself. It's an investment of time and talent for sure. Being able to write and generate that content. And I think we've all been on the receiving end of an algorithm change from Google. So you can't always bank on that, right? What worked last year may not work this year. And what worked 5 years ago certainly doesn't work anymore. So you can't always bank on that. I love that we can see here how everything layers together, and specifically that retargeting and the brand campaigns. If you're unfamiliar with what retargeting is, I would challenge you, go to marketing360.com, check out a couple of pages, read some of our blogs, and I can guarantee you within about 24 hours, you'll start seeing Marketing 360 ads kind of all over the place. Great example of what it is. That's a retargeting program. We use it for our clients, and it's a great visual reminder. David, exactly like you said, it may not always generate that click on the banner, but it does help build that top of mind awareness. We all know the marketing law of 7. Someone's got to see or see your brand or be reminded of your brand at least 7 times before they decide that they're going to take action. So I love seeing all this kind of tied in together.
Yeah, absolutely. Very important. Just to reiterate that thought a third time, to make sure that your marketing spread is very even across the board and that you're focusing on multiple channels and not just one single one to bring in all of your business.
Excellent. Great to point that out again. Let's go ahead and move on. Let's move on to this next slide. We're talking about how to provide easy buying opportunities. And I absolutely love your first bullet point here. Chances are your sales process can be easier. I think there's a lot of people that need to hear that, and it's not just in the contracting world, right?
Yeah.
You could probably think of banks off the top of your head, things like that. And a lot of times, these processes they get put in place. It's not necessarily to protect the consumer. Sometimes these processes are put in place to protect the business, and that's something to think about. Now, changing processes may add an element of risk to what you're doing. But if you're able to free up more time, increase your conversions, bring more of that in, I've always found that the more red tape you can cut, the better service you end up providing, the happier customers you have, the more sales, the more leads, the more referrals you end up getting out of that. So I'm glad that you put that first, because in my mind, that's just incredibly important.
Yes, absolutely. You're right. I think all of us can hear this. This is that first bullet point is something that with each and every one of my clients, every couple of years, we're going back and just continuing to evaluate. How do we make this sales funnel and sales process even easier and more efficient for clients, their clients? It can always be improved. It's never perfect. And it's definitely something that if you focus on it, it will alone, without doing anything else, potentially just increase your bottom line and the business that you have coming in, because you will be closing more business. The big thing in that for me, Brandon, is if we visualize the sales process like a funnel, like a traditional sales funnel, every time that there's an extra step or a snag that a customer has to take or that they run into, it's kind of like poking a hole in that sales funnel. So similar to what you heard Jeremy talk about on landing pages, we see the same thing just within actual sales processes. And so what you want to do is, as much as possible, eliminate the holes that you're poking in your sales funnel by making sure that it is as smooth and seamless as possible for people to move into a purchase decision.
Yep, you got to reduce that friction.
Yes.
And I think you talk about that a little bit on this slide as well. Your website doesn't have to be, in fact, it shouldn't cater to what you want.
Yes.
That's one of the worst ways to build a website, is to build a website based on what you think it should be. You have got to think about what your customers want. What are they looking for? How can you provide that information to them? It caters to everyone's preferences, not just yours. Phone numbers, inquiry forms, addresses for your physical locations, anything that you can provide that's going to help them educate themselves, help them with your, providing your unique selling proposition, help them understand what the next steps are. Because there's an element of fear here, right? If I fill out this form, am I going to get 100 phone calls? If I provide you my email address, are you going to spam me? Things like that. So by providing that information and then reassuring the customer of what the next steps are, I think really helps to clean up this buying opportunity or the buying process and get rid of some of that friction.
Absolutely. One thing I would add on to that is always be listening to your customers. So always make sure that you're hearing their concerns or places where maybe your sale has been going well and then they pull back a little bit. Hold those in your memory bank, write them down, whatever you have to do, and figure out how you can address those things before you get into your next sale or presentation with a potential customer. It could be things as simple as commonly asked questions. How can you potentially put those on the website to answer those and ease people's minds before they ever even pick up the phone? The other thing too to think about more towards your first point, Brandon, is a lot of times I'll get requests on things like inquiry forms to have people fill out all of the information that a contractor could need under the sun. So that'll be, like maybe it's a hail dent repair or something like that. What's the year, make, model of the car? Describe every single dent that's on it. Take 14 pictures and send them to me. Stuff like that very easily dissuades people from actually giving you information because it takes time. It's not easy for them. So you want to ease concerns and you want to make processes very easy and simple for people. The more that you can accomplish those two things, the higher that you'll see conversion rates be.
I like how you pointed out that you have to listen. And I think that kind of goes to your next point here. Make sure that you, as the business owner or the proprietor, that you are as trained and involved in the sales process as your staff actually is. Let's be honest. No one's really going to give the boss super honest feedback. No one's gonna pass that up the chain. And really, there's no way to really get that true understanding of what is your team dealing with when they're out. Then when they're out doing quotes or doing estimates and the sales process like that, you're not going to know the friction there because honestly, they're not going to bark uphill, right?
Right.
You've got to be involved too. So that listening and being involved, I'm glad you point that out.
Well, and one of my favorite things is being able to use our call tracking, Brandon. Mm-hmm. It just having clients go back and listen to themselves. I do this for myself on my own phone calls, but being able to go back and hear yourself, it's amazing how enlightening that is to say, wow, I sounded like that. I absolutely need to change. A really extreme version of this story that I know we all appreciate is we had a client one time who couldn't close any of these leads and they're good quality phone calls coming in. And so we started listening to the calls and he would answer and go, yeah, hello. And people would ask, is this so-and-so company? And he said, yes, who is this? And it was just very inefficient. And then to him, it was no big deal. But the second he heard it, he understood that, I need to change the way that I'm even introducing myself to people. So obviously, most of you don't probably have that issue, but these paying attention to the little things on how you or your staff are working through your sales process can be invaluable and a really beneficial way to increase your actual sales without changing anything else.
Perfect. I love that. And I love that example too. I think we've all probably been on the receiving end of calls like that. You're like, I know you're not trying to be rude, but it's off-putting, right?
Yeah.
It immediately kind of throws you on the back foot and you're not really sure how to respond. And it just starts off, not in the right gear. And it takes you a while to get that call going the way that it should. So let's move on here. Let's sum everything up. If we're boiling this down into bullet points, spend some time and energy in creating or at minimum trying to understand what your value proposition should be, what it needs to be. In fact, we did a quick video on doing a SWOT analysis. We'll link to that in here as well. Sit down, do a SWOT analysis, your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Identify what those are, and I think that'll really help you kind of craft what this value proposition should look like. We've talked about, creating a highly convertible website that showcases your brand. As a part of that, building up your brand reputation through reviews and social proof, simplifying your marketing channels while at the same time understanding that you need to layer in different channels to ensure that your marketing is effective. And finally, make it just really simple, really easy for people to purchase from you or to engage your business and to work with you. David, anything else to add?
No, I think that gives some really concrete, that's my value proposition to everybody watching right now, is you have 5 concrete ways to be able to go improve your business right now. If you really sit down and chew on these 5 points and come up, even if it's just with a notepad in front of you for 20 minutes, ways that you can improve on each of these 5 points, I firmly believe that you can increase your business night and day in the coming weeks and months.
Excellent. All right. Well, again, I want to thank everybody for watching. You can find this presentation after the webinar at m360.us/0D8D. Again, m360.us/0D8D. Thank you guys so much for watching. You can find more of these resources at youtube.com/marketing360. You can also learn more about Marketing 360, and we'd love to work with you. Just go to marketing360.com/start. You can start to build your own marketing plan. We'll connect with you there, and we'll see what we can do to work with you. I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and happy marketing.